Chapter 32. When they left the theatre on Saturday morning, Eddie had driven them to Manchester. This is going to be a sort of magical mystery tour, he had announced in the car. Just sit back and enjoy the ride. Jeremy was in heaven. He watched the countryside speed past on the motorway, and every now and then he would turn to Eddie and catch his eye, and they would smile at each other. Their brief coupling in the theatre was still lingering. Jeremy could smell Eddie on his t-shirt. He was tingling with the need to touch his new lover. As if he could read his thoughts, Eddie put a hand on Jeremy's thigh and caressed him. His hand was gentle at first, then more urgent, travelling further up his leg, kneading his flesh beneath his jeans. He finally found Jeremy's heart on and laughed gently. Oh, so you want more, do you? This is good to know. Shall we stop somewhere and sort you out? Jeremy was embarrassed and did not quite know how to react. Eddie seemed so experienced and well versed in all this seduction business, yet he was so young. They had come off the motorway at the next junction and found a field. Eddie parked behind a hedge and made swift work of taking Jeremy to heaven. Jeremy could not have imagined the excitement of this fast love in a car, in a field, in the middle of the countryside. It made him want to scream with pleasure. His whole body was on fire and wanting more and more. Now come on, Jay. You will have to wait until we get to our destination. Let's get back on the road or we'll be late for the other delights I have in store for you. And with that, Eddie backed out of the gate and set off once more for the bright lights of the big city. They arrived in Manchester an hour later, and Eddie displayed a comprehensive knowledge of the back streets. They finally arrived at the front of a huge Victorian house in a quiet street very near the city centre. Follow me, he ordered, bounding up the front steps and ringing the bell. What about our bags? Jeremy called out. Just leave everything and someone will come and deal with it, replied Eddie. Come on, Jay, hurry up. Just as they just at that moment the door was open and a young man dressed like a butler appeared on the threshold. Welcome to the Queen's Hotel, he said. Do you have luggage? Just a couple of bags, Eddie told him. Very well, we will collect those and bring them to your room. Would you like to park your car, sir? We have a car park at the back for residents. Yes, please. Eddie took Jeremy's arm. Come on, you just wait till you see this. The butler stood back and let them pass and then followed them inside. The place was like a film set, thought Jeremy. The hall was straight out of the television series, upstairs, downstairs. A graceful staircase led upstairs from an original black and white tiled floor. A massive chandelier hung over the proceedings, the hundreds of crystal teardrops sparkling above them. But the most bizarre sight was of a huge gilded framed portrait of the Queen in her ceremonial robes, which hung above the fireplace to the right of the door. Jeremy could hardly stop himself from bursting into laughter. He tugged Eddie's sleeve and pointed at the painting, sneering. You can't be serious. This is outrageous. Our poor monarch would die if she knew she was presiding over a gay hotel in Manchester. Oh, never mind that. Come on. We need to sign in. Eddie skipped off down the corridor ahead. Jeremy dutifully followed him, and like Alice in Wonderland, found himself in another world. The reception desk was vast and had once been mahogany, he guessed. Now, however, it had been gilded to within an inch of its life. It's that inner sea of deep red wallpaper and twinkling rococo features and fittings. No one in this house had ever heard the expression less is more. The butler handed Jeremy a quill pen with peacock feathers and said, Please fill in your details, sir. It is for 2 nights, I understand. Oh, here, let me, said Eddie, taking over. Jeremy was still open-mouthed at his surroundings. Shall I give you a credit card? Asked Eddie, taking out his wallet. By the way, it's George around yet? He inquired. Not yet, sir, but he has sent his regards and looks forward to seeing you later in the bar for a cocktail. Now, would you care to follow me, sir? The butler glided off towards the staircase, the two lovers in his wake. At the top of the stairs, they turned left and stopped at the first door. Written on it in very elegant gold script was the Blue Room. The door opened to reveal a blue room indeed. It was like being in the centre of a Wedgwood plate. There was a room canopy, doubled bed with silk sheets, an enormous blue and gold eiderdown. Jeremy had not seen an eiderdown since he visited his granny as a schoolboy. The lampshades either side of the bed were blue and gold silk, and the wardrobe and dressing table had been painted Wedgwood blue with white trimmings, as were the walls and all the plasterwork. It was incredibly ornate. The butler opened the door to the bathroom to reveal a classic Victorian bathroom with black and white tiles and a large freestanding slipper bath with all the brass fittings. The toilet had the obligatory mahogany seat and the pull chain with a twist of rope of fine coloured silk with a huge tassel to finish it off. The butler then explained that the fridge was hidden inside a tall boy, also painted blue and white. The matching TV looked most incongruous, perched on top of the chest of drawers. Jeremy wondered what Joshua Wedgwood would have made of it. If there is anything else you require, please do not hesitate to ring the bell, the butler said smoothly, and he indicated yet another bell pull with the attendant tassel. Thank you, this is fine, said Eddie, giving him a generous tip. Thank you, sir, said the butler solemnly, then added with a wink and a wiggle, have fun, you guys. Jeremy threw himself on the bed and let out a scream of delight. Eddie, this is unbelievable. How did you know about this place? Eddie was busy opening a bottle of champagne which had been left for them in a splendid silver bucket. Ah, I have friends in high places, or should I say low places, he laughed. Here, let's have a toast to love at first sight, and they touched glasses with a very satisfying ping from the crystal flutes provided. Everything is so over the top, yet somehow fits, remarked Jeremy. Who owns it? A lovely, lovely man called George Delaware. He and his partner Dale have been here for yonks. I don't really know the details, but apparently George used to be a bit of a gangster in the old days, part of the Manchester Mafia. Did you know that in the 50s and early 60s, George Raft, an actor and alleged gang member in America, came over to Manchester to see if there was room for his lot up here, and they went packing up the good old Northerners who had their own mafia, thank you very much, and didn't need the likes of Americans to help them make their millions. George told me all this once when I was here. Eddie took a swig of champagne, then put down his glass and turned to his lover. Now, Mr. Sinclair, I require you to make slow, passionate love to me before dinner. And Jeremy was only too happy to oblige. The rest of the afternoon and early evening were spent making love or drinking champagne. Jeremy decided to try the bath and lay up to his neck in bubbles. There was an extraordinary array of toiletries in the bathroom, and he was determined to work his way through the lot. While he was soaking, Eddie watched TV, or coming into the room to annoy his lover with attempts to seduce him. Leave me alone, I can't take any more, cried Jeremy. I don't believe that for a minute. And Eddie whipped off his clothes and joined him beneath the bubbles. After several of these forays, Jeremy finally managed to finish his bath and get ready for the night ahead. What exactly do you have in store for me? He asked delightedly. Eddie was proving to be full of surprises, and all of them good so far. Well, we have drinks with George, then dinner in the restaurant, then we'll adjourn to the club next door, which is also part of the hotel and owned by George. So basically, we do not have to stray far to take our pleasure, grinned Eddie. Pretty clever, don't you think, Mr. J? Everything close at hand. It is wonderful. You are wonderful. But you still haven't told me how you knew about this place, said Jeremy. Eddie looked at him for a minute, then seemed to make a decision. He sighed and said, my father had several queer friends. Obviously, it is not something he wants to advertise, and my mother does not allow them at the house. Jeremy was about to interrupt, but Eddie stopped him. Yes, I know that what you are going to say, Jay, that she is a bigot and that it is not for her to judge people, etc. Unfortunately, the world is a cruel place, and people are ignorant and bigoted, including my mother. When you think it has only been since 1967 that homosexuality was made legal. This is a mere 15 years ago, Jeremy, and it is still a big thing for a lot of people. You are lucky because you work in a profession where people don't care about things like that. Well, obviously there is a lot of queers in the theatrical profession, which helps, but in the big world outside there is still a great deal of prejudice. My father has started a campaign against discrimination of homosexuals, but it is a real uphill struggle, and none of his so-called posh friends want to know. Is your father here homo then? Asked Jeremy. Eddie paused very briefly before he answered, no, definitely not, which makes it incredibly difficult for me, I know. I mean, how can I tell him I am queer? There was a catch in Eddie's voice, and Jeremy shook his head. In fact, I don't think I will ever be able to be open about it. Jeremy, well, certainly not in my family circles. I'm expected to marry and have a heir to carry on the Graham title. I have seen it with some of my father's friends. They are really queer but all married. I have seen them here in this hotel, but no one says anything. You wouldn't believe it in this day and age, but there is still a terrible stigma about being homosexual. Jeremy took Eddie in his arms and held him close. Come on, mate, he said tenderly. Don't get upset. You have a friend in me now, and we will sort it out. Meanwhile, you have promised me a good time, so let's go and get a few cocktails inside us. Then we won't care about anything. They kissed passionately and almost succumbed to their growing lust, but broke away laughing, promising each other saving all for later. When they arrived in the bar, it was already buzzing. Unlike a normal cocktail bar in a small hotel, the couples sit discreetly chatting in whispers. Here the conversation was loud and frequently interspersed with whoops of delight and screeches of laughter. The barman was naked except for jockstrap and a black bow tie. Jeremy could hardly contain himself, and each new revelation was fuel to the fire. He wanted to be shocked or surprised. He certainly had no idea that hotels like this existed. He was still wrestling with his feelings for Eddie, which had sprung from nowhere seemingly. What would his father think, he wondered, if he announced he was queer? His father enjoyed comics like Larry Grayson, but just dismissed them in general as poofs. Did his dad even know what a homosexual was? He had never had a conversation with his parents about things like this. It had been bad enough when his father brought up the subject of sex and taking precautions. Jeremy had begged him not to continue, assuring him that they all did all this kind of stuff at school and he really did not have to bother. Even at school, no one mentioned homosexuality as such. There was gossip about a boy who had just joined their class from a private school where there had been a big scandal about abuse. But all that means to Jeremy and his mates was that a teacher had been a pedophile. Even this expression was not totally clear to them. Girls got flashed at by dirty old men, so the assumption was it must be the same dirty old men who did whatever they did to girls and boys. But it was not regarded as anything to do with their take on life in general. Certainly not a life choice a young man might take. Jeremy, did you hear me? Eddie's voice cut through his musing. Sorry, I was miles away. What did you say? Would you like to try the house cocktail? I am assured by this charming barman that it is excellent. Eddie gave the barman his most alluring smile, and it occurred to Jeremy that he might have been flirting with him. He felt a flash of unease. Jeremy was discovering emotions he had never felt before, so maybe this unease might better be described as jealousy. This was certainly not an emotion he wanted to feel too often. He shook himself mentally, then turned to Eddie and said, yes, a cocktail would be lovely. This bar is pretty amazing. The bar was not large, but it felt room-like as the walls were a dark pink flock with a ubiquitous walls, highlights, and drapes of silk where necessary. The bar was mirrored glass, and mirrors lined the walls behind it, so customers sitting in the cubicle were reflected in them, doubling the amount of people, which made the room feel even fuller. Everything glowed in pink life. Life was rosy. Good evening, you young things. The voice told a tale of cigarettes and red wine and late nights. George, how lovely to see you. Eddie jumped off his bar stool and embraced the man in front of him. Jeremy thought he was pretty impressive. He was tall, over 6 feet, and broad in the shoulders. He had a fine head of black hair, but the black was out of bottle and rather overused, Jeremy decided. The man was dressed in a dark red velvet smoking jacket with a white shirt underneath, sporting a large frill down the front. He had black trousers and what appeared to be velvet moccasin, with a coat of arms in gold thread sewn on the front. So this is Jeremy, said the deep, throaty voice. Pleased to meet you. Jeremy took the outstretched hand and shook it. The hand was big and warm, and the handshake almost painfully strong. Great to meet you, George. Eddie has been telling me some fantastic stories about you. George looked at Eddie and then back to Jeremy and lowered his voice to say, hopefully not too many stories. Always better to keep things close to the chest. Careless talk costs lives, as they used to say during the war. He paused for a fraction of a second, then burst into laughter. Only kidding, Chuck. Only kidding. My bad boys' days are long gone. Jeremy was not so sure and had the distinct feeling that he would not want to cross Mr. Delaware. However, it was smiles all around, and the drinks flowed. Jeremy explained to George some of his life as an actor, invited him and Dale to come to the first night of Hamlet. We'll see, said George. Dale is not very good at sitting still for long. You'll meet him later. He is our DJ tonight in the club. He loves it up and down like a sailor on shore leave. Well, my pretty babies, I'm going to leave you to have your dinner, and then maybe we can meet up later with Dale for a nightcap. Have a good night and be happy, boys. He kissed them both farewell and drifted off to a table of screaming queens, who were obviously regular guests of the hotel. Eddie and Jeremy joined to the restaurant, which was yet another fantasy of colour and bad taste. This time it was about black walls and lamps that hung from the ceiling above each table, creating a pool of light by which to eat. However, it was incredibly difficult to see anything, and Jeremy got quite hysterical with laughter as he peered through the darkness, trying to talk to Eddie. Stop it, Jay. You will offend our guests, our hosts. It is supposed to be very atmospheric, said Eddie, trying very hard to read the menu. It is certainly that, to the point of being almost stratospheric. Jeremy groped for Eddie's leg under the table. Very good for touching up your date, though, which I guess is what it's all about, really. Eddie giggled and moved closer to Jeremy, and then spent dinner behaving outrageously on the table. It added a whole new meaning to the word table manners. God, if my parents could see me now, they would disown me, said Jeremy, stuffing his face with avocado dip. Have you eaten here before? He was beginning to think that Eddie had been living this life for quite a while. Only once when with a friend from school, Eddie replied, but nothing romantic like this. He leaned across the table and licked some dip off Jeremy's cheek. Can't wait for the strawberries and cream, he whispered. Jeremy had another pang of unease. Something made him think that Eddie was telling him what he knew Jeremy wanted to hear, but he brushed aside the still small voice of suspicion. After all, what did the past matter? This was now, and he knew that Eddie was in love with him, and they would be together forever. This was his destiny. It was meant to be. By the time they had finished dinner, both of them were very tipsy. They arrived back at the cocktail bar to find George and his friends equally well oiled. Here they are, love's young dream, announced George to the table. Boys, meet my Dale, and he practically shoved poor Dale in front of them for inspection. It was not at all what Jeremy had imagined, if indeed he had imagined anyone at all, but it certainly would not have been anyone close to the vision in front of them. Dale was tall and elegant as a willow, and with long blonde hair nearly to his shoulders. He had piercing blue eyes and very defined cheekbones. He was like a model, thought Jeremy. Hi, pleased to meet you, said Dale in a soft voice, almost lisping. I hear you're coming to the club later. I will play a song for you if you tell me what you would like to hear. He lifted a long, delicate hand to his face and brushed some hair from his eyes. Then he turned and pranced off like a racehorse. Don't mind Dale, said George. I told you he can't keep still. Now sit yourself down and have some of this champagne. They sat down and introduced themselves to the rest of the table. Eddie seemed to be in his element and entertained them all with jokes and stories from the next hour. The irony was not lost on Jeremy, who, for all his training as an actor, now felt completely useless, yet somehow it didn't matter. His ego did not feel threatened, and he was happy to bask in his lover's reflected glory. He was on high, not just from the champagne, but from Eddie's attention. He had never felt so complete as a man. He just wanted to spend every minute with this guy and feel his energy inside him. He was lost to the world that night. When they got to the club, Jeremy danced for hours. He gave himself to the thudding bass beat and just let rip. He had never really danced in his life, and he made Eddie laugh with the attempts at disco dancing. There were bodies all around him, and he could feel their feet. Different men passed by, and he would kiss him or touch him up. As they danced past, he loved the attention and yet always looked for Eddie for assurance. Eddie was equally busy moving around the dance floor, flirting and touching up dancers. The two of them danced with another boy for quite a long time. It got very steamy, and there was talk of going back to the room for a threesome, but Jeremy suddenly got cold feet and backed off. Eddie danced him into a corner and kissed him passionately. Don't fret, Jay. You are the only thing in my life now. We don't have to have any diversion or side orders if you don't want them. I am happy with just you and me. Let's go back to the room now and make love all night. Come on, you gorgeous man. I'm feeling so randy. Jeremy was so drunk by this time he could not have done anything much in the way of dancing or flirting. When they got to the room, he fell across the bed and passed out. The next thing he knew, Eddie was undressing him very slowly and whispering in his ear, You're gorgeous and wonderful and useless and drunk, but I love you. Jeremy Sinclair, just get your clothes off and you will soon feel better because you will be feeling me inside beside you. Jeremy giggled and freed his foot from his trousers and made a grab for Eddie, who rolled off the bed and out of reach. That's more like my Jay. There is hope for you yet. Okay, I'm going to take my clothes off now and then we will see who is too drunk to screw. Not me, cried Jeremy, suddenly coming back to life. Ready or not, here I come. And he sprang, grabbed Eddie and threw him down on the bed, pinning him against the bed head. He searched Eddie's face for several moments, trying to read every little tick or twitch. He looked deep into his lover's eyes and saw himself reflected there. He was giddy with lust, and every muscle was taut with anticipation. I love you, Eddie, he said very slowly, then lowered himself down and found Eddie's mouth for a deep kiss that took him away to paradise. Chapter 33. Sunday was indeed a day of rest for our two young lovers. They missed breakfast and lunch and finally opened an eye around 2 o'clock. Several trays of glass and 2 pots of coffee later, Eddie announced that they should go for a walk. It's cold out there, grumbled Jeremy, still snuggling under the sheets. But it is not raining and the sun is visible. Come on, you wuss, get your kit on. I want to take you by the canal, and then I thought we could have an early dinner at an amazing Chinese restaurant I know called the Mandarin. It is incredibly famous in these parts and has been going for years. Jeremy really had no say in the matter and decided to succumb to whatever Eddie had in mind. His brain no longer seemed to function on a practical level anymore. It was all about sensation and emotional highs and living every moment with this incredible boy. Jeremy felt so old compared with Eddie, and yet there were only 2 years between them. Eddie, however, seemed to have lived more lifetimes in those 2 years than Jeremy would ever do in 20. The boys set off in their winter woolies and walked briskly along the canal. It was pretty bleak, even with the sun shining on the dark water, but Eddie seemed to love it. I reckon this will be a very popular one day, he said. The old warehouses and cottages will all get gentrified. You just wait and see. By 5 it was dark, and they made their way into the centre of Manchester to the Chinese restaurant, which was packed already even at this early hour. Everyone here is Chinese, exclaimed Jeremy. Exactly, replied Eddie with a grin. The menu was extensive, and Jeremy lost his will to live, just trying to read it. So once again he put himself into the capable hands of his lover. Eddie went to town, and they really had trouble finishing the banquet, especially when it came to the chicken feet, a specialty of the house. Oh, Eddie, this is really stuck in my craw. Oh, Eddie, this is really stuck in my craw, groaned Jeremy, practically gagging. I can't eat it, I'm so sorry. And he virtually spat it out into his napkin. I must say you do look rather purple, chuckled Eddie. Don't want to kill you off so soon in the relationship. Come on, let's grab a taxi to the hotel and have a cocktail. By the time they got back, Jeremy was so full of Chinese he just wanted to lie down and go to sleep. Oh, don't be such an old misery guts, retorted Eddie. Get in the shower and you will soon feel like a new man. Jeremy did as he was told and stood for a good 10 minutes, letting the hot water across his back and shoulder. He suddenly called out to Eddie, "You are right, I do feel like a new man. Got anyone in mind?" The next thing he knew, he was being scrubbed with a loofah, and Eddie was whispering in his ear, "I haven't got any new men, but this one has plenty of wear left in him, so shut up and enjoy." Later they strolled into the bar, feeling on top of their game. As per usual, the bar was full to bursting, and the conversation as loud and shrill as ever. Eddie waved to George, who was holding court at a big centre table. They decided to sit at the bar for a while and order champagne cocktails. This is slipping down a treat," said Jeremy. "Please order me another immediately." He leaned across and was about to plant a kiss on Eddie's cheek when a familiar voice stopped him in his tracks. Well, what do we have here?" "Love's young dream." "I didn't think you had it in you, Jeremy. I was obviously completely wrong." Jeremy turned to look up from the bar stool into the amused eyes of Robert Johnson. "Robert, what a surprise! This is my friend Edward." "Eddie, this is Robert Johnson, our assistant director." "Hi, would you like to drink, Robert?" asked Eddie innocently enough. "No, I'm fine, thanks. I'm joining some friends here in a minute. Actually, Jeremy, I'm joining Charles and his friend Lord Graham." He had turned to Eddie as he said this. Eddie kept his cool, but Jeremy just froze. "Do you know Lord Graham, Edward?" asked Robert, pointing hesitantly holding the boy's gaze. I should do, replied Eddie. He's my father. Can't think what he would be doing here of all places. I'm sure he would be saying exactly the same about your presence here, don't you think? Taunted Robert. In that case, maybe it's a good idea that we keep this meeting to ourselves. Come on, Jeremy. We were just going anyway. We only stopped by for a quick drink, looking for an active friend of Jeremy's. Jeremy rose and squeezed past Robert, who was standing very close to both of them. Sorry, excuse me, he stuttered. See you tomorrow at the read-through. Robert's smile was practically reptilian. You certainly will, my dear. Enjoy the rest of your evening. A pleasure to meet you, Edward. He called back over his shoulder and then he was gone. Once back in the room, Jeremy and he discussed the seriousness of the situation. We haven't done anything wrong, for God's sake. We are both over age, and why shouldn't we why shouldn't we be having a drink here? Doesn't mean we are queer necessarily, suggested Eddie. Oh, come on, Ed. Did you see a single straight man in that room? I don't really mind, because no one will care what I get up to, but you're a different matter. Your father will go mad, and if he discovers his son and heir is a homosexual. Eddie thought about this for a minute. Yes, you are right. But then, what was my father doing here? He added. I suppose Giles must have suggested they come here, and your father's curiosity got the better of him. He said he is very relaxed about the queer thing, and maybe he wanted to see a bit of the life for himself. I suppose so, pondered Eddie, but he did not sound convinced. However, it's not a conversation I want to pursue at this point in time, so let's hope Robert keeps his mouth shut. I wouldn't bank on it, said Jeremy. He's a weird one, and very difficult to read. He was quite pleasant to me at the beginning of the season, but he has cooled off since it became clear I do not fancy him. Having said that, he never really comes onto anybody too strongly, and he spends quite a lot of time flirting with the girls, so maybe he's playing a game of all round. He definitely has Giles' ear though. Not quite sure why yet. Maybe when we see what he does as a director on Hamlet with Giles, we will spot the talent. Who knows? I will keep a very close eye on him in future. That's all we can do for now. Come on, let's watch some TV. I am knackered, and tomorrow's a big day for me. Oh, my poor baby. Okay, we will chill tonight, and you can show me your version of an actor prepares, as long as it involves lots of sex. The weekend ended perfectly for Jeremy on Sunday night, with indeed not much sleep, but lots of love-making. This has to last me a while, he murmured to Eddie as they started to drift into blissful sleep. Good night, you beautiful man. Eddie turned and kissed him on the forehead. Sleep, perchance to dream. The next morning they ate a huge cooked breakfast in rather a subdued mode. Will you be around at all this week? Asked Eddie. I doubt it very much. Rehearsals will be full on because there is a hell of a lot to get through. Mind you, but I am killed there maybe sometime. But don't worry, I will ring you whenever I can. Jeremy smiled across the table. Well, just remember, I will mostly be out in the middle of nowhere in a bloody tractor. Best time to get me is before 7 or after 5. But then you on stage shall call you at your digs around 11, Eddie suggested. Yes, that might be best. Oh, Eddie, this has been so wonderful. I don't want to end. Jeremy took Eddie's hand across the table. Don't fret, there'll be many more weekends, and even better than this, Eddie promised, squeezed his lover's hand. But come now, we must get you back to the state of Denmark, where something is rotten, and where princes come from. You have battles to fight, my love. Thanks for listening.